What's up, Bob? How are you, dog?
Shelly, don't knock over your
Oh
coffee.
man, look.
There's no coffee in here. Right?
I look, man. This is all for show. This is all for show now for you. How you doing, bro?
I'm good. I'm blessed.
Dude, it's so nice being here with you today. This is one of those moments in life where you realize that New York is awesome, or LA is awesome. When you pay expensive prices to be in an area, because the center of the universe, you're living in the center of the universe.
Yeah, well, you live right down the block from Soul in the Hole. I don't know if you know that.
What's that?
The playground right here. It's called Raymond Bush now.
Oh, right. It's called Soul in the Hole?
Well, that's the film in the late 90s, Soul in the Hole, that featured Ed Bilger Smith, was shot right there. That's where the tournament used to be.
Dude, there's so many things in I was watching a Biggie freestyle where he was like 17 years old, and he's I saw on the back of the address was 1001. So I was like, oh, where is that? It has to be somewhere close by. It was right there on Bedford, right there at where the bar Dynaco or Playground Coffee. And you walk by these things every single day, and you don't know you're walking past history.
Oh, they got the mural over on what is it?
That's on Bedford and is it not Green?
I forget. Anyway,
the gate, something like that. But yeah, you're just constantly walking through history. But it's so nice. I mean, the first time I'm from Virginia, and the first time I discovered you was through your Netflix series of The Stretch and Bobbito.
It wasn't a series. It was
the documentary
that they aired. Yeah, and I was very grateful for that because Netflix is a tremendous platform. You know, I had my first film on there back in 2013. It was titled "Doing It in the Park," Pickup Basketball NYC, and they picked up my second film, Stretch and Bobbito, Radio That Changed Lives. And at that point, I mean, they had increased their audience to 193 countries. I think 100 million. Subscribers plus, so you know that alone put me and Stretch on the map in places we had never been, like India, where we finally got to go to together. We had our first gig in Mumbai, sponsored by Levi's, and there were cats coming up to us that had seen the film, but basically had no idea who we were prior to that. So I'm grateful for Netflix.
Well, yeah, I think one thing is technology has played a major role in how we communicate these days, obviously.
Sure.
So me growing up in Virginia as a kid, things that were happening in New York City, I wouldn't know unless I was really living in New York City, unless I was experiencing it.
That said, I mean, you know, we had a lot of listeners in Virginia because it was part of the drug traffic trade.
Oh, yes.
So a lot of dealers would go down there and drop off tapes, and, you know, there was a whole, like, bootleg tape distribution of our show. That you know, and Virginia was one of the states that we made a stamp at. You know, we had some diehard listeners down there. You know, that was over my head how the tapes got there, but you know.
Well, one thing is that you know, you are a Renaissance man, and I interviewed DJ Clark Kent recently.
Cool.
And you and him kind of had the same. When I think of New York City, you guys are the quintessential New Yorkers. You guys are the fabric and the heartbeat of the city and what it is to be a New Yorker. So for a lot of folks, you got your start off in radio. And you were a pioneer in hip-hop radio here in New York City.
I'm not a pioneer. People say that, but there's a whole generation, a whole decade of pioneers who preceded me and Stretch. Me and Stretch came in the 90s. We didn't invent the platform or the blueprint. We definitely rearranged it and changed its course. But when one speaks of pioneer, I think of like Africa Islam or Zulu Beats. I think of Mr. Magic. I think of Special K and Teddy Ted, Red Alert, Marley Marl. Those are the dudes, you know, who were really on the forefront of bringing hip hop to the radio. What me and Stretch did in the 90s though was an incredible era. But you know, always correct younger people when they're like, yo, pioneers, like, nah, respect to the real pioneers.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
And when you left radio, how did you get into film? Like, how did the transition into film
I mean, it's an 8-year gap from me leaving WKCR 89.9 FM in 2002 to 2010 when I started directing my first film, which is Doing in the Park, Pickup Basketball NYC. And I think if you watch my current documentary, it's autobiographical, it's titled Rock, Rubber, 45s. You get to see the entirety of my childhood, my educational quandaries, my setbacks, my experience living in New York, culturally in various communities, from sneakers to basketball to music to hip hop, and then all of this sort of like forming my career. And then my career jumps. I'm a DJ. I'm a writer. I'm an author. I'm a TV personality, ambassador, author, documentarian, journalist, pro ball player. You get all these things, and all of those sort of create this sort of foundation for me to become a filmmaker. So Rock Rebel 45s is the culmination of me DJing and understanding how to create a 5-hour set and using that sensibility, music supervising Rock Rebel 45s and providing accentuation, but also blends and mixes that a normal filmmaker wouldn't do because they're not DJs. And only DJs and other producers would hear or think, oh, they just did a reverb slap. Oh, those two beats just matched up tempo-wise and on key. It's like a lot of subtle stuff that most people wouldn't catch. But
where did the title come from?
Well, let me finish what I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So my experiences as a ball player, my experiences as a sneakerhead, like, all these things, my experiences writing a book, Where'd You Get Those? New York City Sneaker Culture, 1960, 1987. My experiences as a journalist, writing for Vibe and Slam Magazine, and I was a editor-in-chief of my own publication, Bounce, from the Playground. And so all these skills were infused into the making of Rock Rebel 45s. So, it's something that I landed on purposely. I didn't think I was DJing and writing and doing all these things to one day become a filmmaker. But when I just made the decision to start making films, and I've made 3 in the last 8 years, all those elements helped, in the edit room and in the production, and connections are currency. I know Pee Wee Kirkland, I know Lin-Manuel Miranda, I know Patti LaBelle, I know Questlove, I know Crazy Legs, all these people like sincere, contacts. Yo, will you be in my film? And so I got a phenomenal cast for Rock Rebel 45s, kind of like mind blowing. Chris Paul, Scottie Pippen, people you wouldn't expect to see in the same film, So I'm very Stevie Wonder, So, I'm very proud of Rock Rebel 45s. It is the culmination of my entire career. It's autobiographical, and it was a tough film to make. There's some low points, and I'm completely transparent and about sensitive and delicate issues in my past. And I'm thrilled by the reaction and the response that it's been getting. Whether it's been online, it's available on Vimeo and iTunes and Hulu and Amazon and Google Play, or in the theaters and special events that I've been screening it at. And I've gone hard this summer. I did like maybe 14 weekends in a row. Some, 2-3 cities in the same, Friday to Sunday patch. But it's all been worth it, to see that people be impacted the way they have,
What inspired the title?
You finally came back to that. You did good. So I wanted something that was a little coded. Early on it was just before I really put thought to it. It was like I don't know if you saw the Tribe Called Quest film. It was like Beats, Rhymes, Life.
Yep.
And I thought that was really great. But I thought that it didn't take much imagination to figure out what the film was about. Not a knock against Michael Rappaport, the Tribe. I'm just, so I thought like, I want something to be representative of the 3 narratives that are going to be in this film, which is, basketball, sneakers, and music. So early on, it was like ball, beats, and kick, or ball, kicks, beats, ball, beats, kicks. And I was trying to play off of that. I just thought it was just too I like coded things. I mean, that's why I love Rakim and I love Nas and I love Organized Confusion and Pharoah Monch, because you can listen to their songs 20 years later and figure out a metaphor that you never even realized was there, you know? You know, Rock Rubber 45s was like probably like the 50th or 60th title I come up with. And, you know, and once I said it out loud, it fit. And I was like, that's what we're going to run with.
And what do you want folks to, when they see the film, to walk away with knowing about you?
Well, you know, as I said, I was an open book in the film. And I think most importantly, I wanted to create a blueprint for freelance creatives, and for people to see how difficult it is to work for oneself, but also how joyful it can be working for yourself. And also, I wanted people to, particularly people of color, to not feel limited. You know, I've often been asked, like, well, if you had to pick between basketball and music, which one would you do? And like, well, actually, I've been able to do both, and well, on a global level. Yeah, I think, and you know, in particular in the delicate issues of the film, you know, a lot of reviewers really misunderstood the film. They were like, oh, you know, who is he to do an autobiographical documentary? I mean, there are none for people of color that I know of.
Well, what's the difference in writing an autobiography book?
Exactly. If I were to write an autobiography like Rosie Perez did and Raquel Cepeda did and Angie Martinez did and, you know, my peers, you know. It's applauded. Anyone. Bill Russell, yeah. I mean, you know, it would be looked at as like, oh, great, he wrote a book. You know, I thought to write an autobiographical book, but after doing 2 films and realizing the impact that people can have, that people could receive when they're in a shared space. Most people read books in their privacy, you know. You laugh out loud on the train, but people on the train don't know what you're laughing at. When people watch a film, you know, when I did Central Park Summer Stage, I had 2,000 people laughing at the same time. It's a beautiful communal experience. And, you know, as we resonate our spirits with each other, you know, like the film is not really autobiographical because there's too many people that see themselves on screen. And that's what I'm getting time and time again. I'm getting people crying on my shoulder. I'm getting people emailing me the next day, you know, sometimes weeks later, because it takes them time to process what they experienced watching the film. They see themselves. And that was another thing that I wanted to try to put out in the world. I mean, it's, you know, in the hip hop world, in the hip hop space, you know, there are social cues that are some are toxic, you know, or some are very just, you know, not really inviting for someone to share experiences that may be viewed as less masculine or less less manly. You know, I was abused as a kid, and it's not something I'm proud of. It's not something that I controlled. But I've felt that the more I've shared it with people and with others, the more it's been empowering for others to heal as well as myself. And so, you know, coming up with the idea of the film to really just be transparent and not just do a greatest hits. Oh yeah, I had Stevie Wonder at the party with Spinner, and oh yeah, I interviewed Michael Jordan for Vibe magazine. Oh yeah, me and Stretch had this great radio show in the 90s, and oh yeah, I did this. You know, that would be like APK, you know, like that's something for YouTube, you know, to help you get gigs. I did a film that like is a real American, real New York, real global story.
Do you think that there was that because it was the kind of the first autobiographical documentary? I think anytime you're the first, it opens up the opportunity for people to critique.
That's the
because there's nothing to really
to
gauge it off of.
And I want to say, I mean, you know, there was the Kid Stays in the Picture. I think is one of the better known autobiographical docs. There have been others, but I don't know any in the hip hop
space. Yes,
in the hip hop space for sure. There's been biographies by other directors about someone, but for someone to say, "Hey, I am gonna own my own narrative and I'm going to share it. And because I have 2 films in my pocket, I have the experience to do this. I don't know anybody who's done that, you know. And for people of color, like in terms of my research, I don't know anybody. So I was going into uncharted territory, as I've done in basically every chamber of my career. So for me, it was good. It was a challenge. It was a little bit of like, well, I don't know how this is going to be received. You know, I knew my audience was going to love it. I didn't know what the Tribecas and the New York Times Film Review and Village Voice and all them, I didn't know how they were going to receive it. It became a critic's pick for New York Times. They got it, you know. But, you know, it remains to be seen as I push this film and try to get it to the most amount of audiences, how it continues to be shared.
Do you think it also, being in the era that we're living in now where creators can control their own narrative, like back in the day, if I were to go to promote my album, I'm going to go see Stretch and Bobbito, and I'm going to go hop on the show. Yeah. And that was my way of getting my, publicizing what I'm working on. Mm-hmm. Do you think that with the times that we're living in content-wise, you're seeing that, like when Kanye does an interview, he brings Charlemagne on the Kanye West YouTube page to do the interview. Or Eminem just recently had an interview with Sway, where he brought Sway to do the interview on the Eminem platform. Do you think that's kind of the future of where film could be going, as far as people kind of creating their own narrative through film about themselves?
I would love to see that. I don't know if that is, but you know, I think we have been taught a lesson in hip hop in the 90s where, you know, there were a lot of artists who were, you know, tired of A&Rs at major labels telling them what to do and limiting them, their concepts. And, you know, Stretch and I, for our NPR podcast, we just interviewed Maimouna Youssef, who's a phenomenal singer. And she was, you know, as a singer, she was telling us, like, yeah, you know, as a person of color, you know, the labels were telling me I can only talk about, you know, dating or, you know, love or, you know, she was like, that's why she chose the independent route. So, you know, we're seeing that constantly in multiple industries, you know, film, publishing, music, and, you know, distribution models have changed. So it is paramount for us to control our narrative and to try to get it out to the most amount of people. And there are ways to do that in this era, in this digital era. That all said, though, you know, ultimately, you know, you can reach a niche audience, but to get to, like, you know, the larger audience, you need some platform to broadcast it, you know. So, yeah.